So the day of the draft has arrived, and we're gonna go ahead and go in the voice channel here so that we can mute myself. But we're gonna be in the voice channel here so that we can hear all the discussion going on. The commissioner will be the one proceeding with everything and saying who's up as far as the next player that is picking. Once that player is what's called on the clock, when it's their turn to select, for the first 3 rounds, that player will have 90 seconds, and from round 4 on, each selection will take 45 seconds. If you do not pick in the allotted time, your slot will be moved to the end of the round instead. Now we're on the draft screen here. Here's the draft order that's going to be this season. You can see for now we are filled in our team, the only non-fans. So we're going to go ahead and wait for the Phoenix Sunkers, and they'll type in the chat, and we'll actually make our selection here in a minute to see how that goes. But let's see what the Phoenix Sunkers decide to go with. And okay, so in this hypothetical situation, we see that Chino with the Phoenix Sunkers, he has decided to take Dragapult here. So as we look at the, let's move over to the tiers real quick. As we cross over, we now see that Dragapult is grayed out with the strike through as well. So no other players for the duration of this season can select Dragapult. As we advance further in the draft, we now see that we are up. We kind of skipped ahead. So like you can see all the Pokemon that the players have picked above us. We can go to the tier angle. We now see that those Pokemon are grayed out and have a strike through in them. So no players are going to be allowed to use them except for the respected players that drafted them. So now we're on the clock. So let's go ahead and think of a Pokemon that we'd like to draft in this selection. So far as the kind of trend tends to be, usually S tiers are taken very early in the draft, but you can kind of go whichever way that you'd like. As a matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and buck that trend. I think in this position, grabbing a Melmetal seems very strong. So let's go ahead and input that then. So now we have hopped over to the draft selections tab here. So we're going to go ahead and I'll show you the format on how you're going to select the Pokemon that you like. So you're going to type in your team name. So for us, we're the only Dawn fans. This is where I do somewhat feel kind of sad for you guys that have long team names, because you'll be having to type it in. So the only Dawn fans, they're going to go ahead and select. And you can, there's many ways you can do it. You can just dash, and you'll put the Pokemon that you'd like. Melmetal. And many players, you know, just so that it's easier for me to scan, it's a lot easier. They might put Melmetal A tier, right? That's something you can put, or you can many players you know, they'll do something like this. That's another way, / hyphen, just as long as it's readable. Once it is put in this chat right here, that is your official. Even if you're in the voice chat, you saying it does not count. It has to be here on text so that it's written in stone. And now that we have it, let's go ahead and go back to the draft section here. So at that point, the commissioner will fill it in as he has there. We go back to the tiers, and Melmetal has been grayed out and strike through. And so we have actually picked up our A tier, you know, maybe one of the better A tiers in this draft league. So now we got to wait for our next turn in the second round, and it would be so on and so forth. In the second round, we can choose to draft another A tier, or we can go ahead and go for our S tier at that point. The choice is yours on how you would like to construct your team. So overall, really some of the main points was just kind of the order. So essentially each player is going to take turns. Once it's your turn to select, you will type it in the Discord in this sort of format. We'll also have an example format before the draft starts one more time. You'll also see the other players the way they're doing it. And then again, for those of you that aren't aware, so in a draft league, in anything that's draft oriented, you will take turns. So for example, we just went, nobody else is typing in their Pokemon, their selection, but the player that was on the clock. So in this case, it was only us. For those 90 seconds, only we could select a Pokemon. So now at this point, it would be Superior with the Florida for Alligators, and only he can select a Pokemon, right? And everybody, you're taking turns based off what this kind of order is in the draft. So keep that in mind, where you're picking, how far, again, you know, will it be until you pick, etc., etc. Now that we've drafted, you know, now that we've seen how to draft a Pokemon, let's go ahead and fill out a makeshift roster, and let's go ahead and learn how to bring our Pokemon to battle at that point. Okay, so as you can see, we've simulated the rest of the draft, and now we have our sort of hypothetical roster here. It isn't the best, but that's also how Draft League works. You'll be plenty of times where you might have a certain team revision in mind, and you may not be able to round out all your weaknesses or even all your resistances, but it's how well you can pivot and move. But let's say this is what we were able to get our hands on, and we're going to try and make it work. So you can see below where our roster is, there's an S slot, 2 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. That is the standard of what you would bring to a battle. So if you look below the roster, you'll see 1 S, 2 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. That is the cookie cutter of what you could bring to a battle. So in this example, we'll go ahead and say we want to bring the Galarian Zapdos, we want to bring Melmetal, we'd like to bring Mew, we'd like to bring Snorlax, Registeel, and Rotom Fan. This is a valid team that we can bring against one of our opponents in either singles or doubles. So obviously this qualifies because we have our 1 S tier, 2 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. So that is a good cookie cutter. Or, you know, you can swap out, maybe instead of the Zapdos, you want the Volcanion instead, right? Instead of Melmetal, we want the Incineroar. Another way you can go about it is you can also substitute your slots down. So let's throw another example and say that we didn't have 2 S tiers, or maybe we don't want to bring either of our S tiers. You can actually sub down, instead of bringing a particular Pokemon in that slot, you can actually bring any tier below that slot in its place. An example, obviously the easiest one would be, instead of bringing an S tier, we can bring an extra A tier in that slot, we can bring an extra B tier or C tier. So essentially, instead of bringing an S, you can bring an extra tier of choice, right? So we can bring Chansey in that slot. Right, so at this point we would have 3 B tiers, 2 A tiers, 1 C tier. Simple enough. But what if we do want to bring our S tier? Can we sub our B tier out? Yes, we can. We can sub out the Snorlax and bring in a Liepard. Because, right, we're subbing down. So we're subbing down our B tier, and we're going to sub it down into a C tier. C tier is the only tier lower than B, so if you're going to sub out your B tier, it has to be for C tier. Basically, no matter how you do it, the kind of you'll never be able to bring 2 S tiers, right? There's no way you can sub your A's or B's or C's for S tier. You can't sub up. And minimum, you have to at least bring 1 C tier, because the C tier, right, cannot be subbed for anything else. You're always going to at least need to bring 1 C tier. Now, if you wanted to, right, here's another theoretical, you could sub all your slots down and bring 6 C tiers if you like. You know, we've had a trainer one time bring 3 B tiers and 3 C tiers to his battle. He actually brought, he subbed out all his A's and his S tier and just, you know, filled up the slots, but he brought nothing but B and C tiers in his battle, and that is a viable option as well, because you're just trying to, let's look at our roster above, you're just trying to also conform to what beats your opponent. So don't think that you're ever locked in, hey, I have to bring 2 A tiers or I have to bring 2 B tiers. You can bring, you know, as we go ahead and we'll form another example here, you can choose to bring just, you know, maybe both B tiers you want to sub out. So you can bring the Liepard, right? You can bring yourself another C tier. So in this scenario, we have 1 S, 2 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C tier. And so that conforms as well, right? We could sub out both of these A tiers and bring in these B tiers if we'd like. So we can enter the battle with an S tier. These 2 B tiers will be taking over the A tier slots, and these B tier slots will be taken over by the C tier, right? And since these are still the B tiers, we can remove the C tier and throw in Registeel. Right? We can throw out this C tier as well, and we can, I mean, this is another valid team combination, because in your B tier slots, they're getting filled naturally by B tiers. Your S tier slot actually has your S tier, and your 2 A tier slots are being subbed down into a B tier. And your C tier has been, that spot has been satisfied and filled. So that's just a quick little rundown, how the draft works, how matchmaking works, and how to bring your Pokemon into battle. The rest at that point is up to you guys. I hope everybody does well in the draft and does well this season. as it pertains to this, any players that have any questions as far as if their team is valid, are they satisfying kind of the tier requirements, always feel free to message me. Just send me the list of Pokemon you're thinking of bringing. It's better to do that because if you accidentally, for example, bring 3 A tiers while still bringing your S tier, at that point, that would qualify as a game loss. Even if you win the game, you would actually lose at that point. So just, that's one thing to remember. The other thing that gets players as well is, remember, we have item clause. I'm trying to put letters up here. We do have item clause. Make sure your Pokemon are holding different items. That is a big thing. But hope this tutorials video was helpful for you guys. Good luck this season.